Hey everybody, welcome back to Jeff Bowles Central. We're checking out Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. The sequel to this game is coming out in about a week's time, and you can bet that I will be reviewing it here on Jeff Bowles Central, so stay tuned for that. This is the game about psychosis. This is the game that kind of tries to simulate what a psychotic episode is about, and that's pertinent to my channel, to Jeff Bowles Central, because I also do mental health videos, because I suffer from psychosis. I have schizoaffective disorder, which is a form of schizophrenia, which is what Senua has, and this whole game is one long psychotic episode turned into a violent video game. And I have to tell you, I don't know how I feel about that exactly, because I don't like a serious actual mental illness tied to violence necessarily, but I'm not going to bother with that too much, because you know this is an excellent video game. Okay, I tried to play this game when it first came out about 6 or 7 years ago. I could not at that time because I was suffering from psychosis really bad, and it was triggering me. And there is a disclaimer at the beginning of the game that says if you're suffering from schizophrenia, don't play it or be cautious with it. And so that's what I did. I decided not to play it, but I'm feeling better these days, and I have a channel to run. And I've got video game videos to do, and the sequel's coming out. So I'm going to review this, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit as a schizophrenic. Okay? That's the plan. So Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, is an interesting mix of psychology, Norse mythology, gameplay, puzzle solving, and it's trippy as hell. It's a really trippy experience. This is the game that threatens you with the idea that if you die too many times, this black inky rot will crawl up your character's arm, and if it gets to her head, Senua's head, you die permanently, permadeath. That whole thing is a ruse, apparently. That whole thing is not true at all. Not to spoil it for you, but you can die as many times as you want. That's what they found out. Even though, but that's part of the thing. They wanted it to be part of the not knowing what's real and what's not, okay? So that's interesting. So it's not as hard as you think it is. It's not about permadeath. It is a bit about repeating yourself a little bit, but it's not about permadeath. The best thing about this game, hands down, is the combat. The puzzle solving is a little less brilliant, if you ask me, but the combat is pretty good. The boss battles are excellent. They're both challenging and different, so you never feel bogged down. The enemy variety in this first game, and I have a feeling they'll address it in the sequel, the enemy variety isn't the best, but the combat's good enough that you don't really care that much. This is one of those games where you have to watch your opponent carefully, and if they are striking, you got to watch for timing so you can parry or get out of the way, or if they've got a shield, you can shield break. And get in your strong attacks and your weak attacks. The thing is that there's no helping hand here. The Ninja Theory, the developer, they don't hold your hand. There's no tutorial section. There's no on-screen HUD. There's no health bar. There's no mini map. There's nothing like that. You have to watch Senua as far as if she's starting to look like she's bleeding out. Trust me, she's bleeding out. You have to listen to the voices, because the voices will kind of give you clues as to how she's doing in combat, or if she's going the wrong way in a puzzle-solving scenario. And other than that, it's like one protracted, seamless, psychotic episode. That's kind of what it's meant to hearken to. Now, the puzzle-solving, as I mentioned, is not as brilliant as the combat. To me, it's like it always boils down to finding shapes, runes, or some kind of like weird raven triangle thing, finding those shapes in the environment, matching them up so that you can open the door to the next area, so that you can fight the next group of enemies or fight the boss. These sections where you're solving puzzles and you're kind of on foot, they're less interesting, but they're not disinteresting because the story keeps going. The voices tend to be a little bit narrative sometimes. Sometimes they're spewing nonsense, which is accurate to psychosis as well. Sometimes they're really frightening. Sometimes they sound like they're suffering. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's kind of horrific, really. And that also, unfortunately, is a lot like psychosis at the worst of it. It's not pleasant. But they also tell a story of sorts, because the whole thing is a metaphor for her insanity, basically. There's a ghost kind of character who kind of is haunting you and following you around and telling his story. That's really interesting. So that's it. That's the whole package. It's trippy. The fighting is excellent. Puzzle solving, less so, but I can deal. Like, it's okay. It's cool. And the story is just really interesting, and you can't tear your eyes away from the screen. For God's sakes, it's one of the most gripping things. Not to oversell it, but this is really a great game if you can handle the psychotic elements, because you're not a sufferer of psychosis. Now listen, because I'm also a mental health channel, there are people on my channel who watch my videos who do suffer from serious mental health issues. So I would say that disclaimer applies to you. I would also say that the other disclaimer, the suggestion that the game has at the beginning, is that you wear headphones, so that it's binaural audio that actually really does simulate pretty well what it's like to hear voices out of nowhere, right? I would say avoid that as well if you have psychotic symptoms. This game came out at a time that I was really suffering, so I can tell you that it's an intense experience, and like, other than being helpful to the game, to the actual experience of it, it's like a psychosis simulator, like one of those schizophrenia simulators you can find here on YouTube if you Google it, if you YouTube it. Not super fun to suffer from this, but I appreciate that Ninja Theory went there. They interviewed people who suffered from schizophrenia. They interviewed psychologists who work with people who suffer from schizophrenia, who study it. And so they did the best they could. It is bound up in a really violent game, but I don't know that I mind about that, because it's actually trying to shed some light on the experience, so that maybe people out there aren't so frightful of people like me. When you say schizophrenia, when you say you suffer from schizophrenia, you get a lot of looks. There's fear, because in our society we've bound up schizophrenia with something really scary and nasty and awful and violent. And it's not usually. It's just an awful mental disease that some people have to deal with. So I appreciate them for going there. I appreciate this game. Other than that, it's a hell of a fun game, and I think you should play it if you can. And please do stay tuned to Jeff Bowles Central. We are going to review it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it, hit the notification bell. Perfect. Perfect. Talk to you later. Bye.
School when I was 9, told me she had feelings, she had lies.